So as you know, I have already discussed in detail and in depth, comprehensively, all the uses and functions of the four forms of present tense, the first three forms of past tense, that is simple past, past continuous, past perfect, and here I am about to proceed to past perfect continuous tense. But before I dive into the uses and the functions of PPC, let's just brush up on the structure, on the formula of past perfect continuous tense. How do we construct a sentence in past perfect continuous tense? Let's see. First comes the subject, followed by had, been. V4 is nothing but adding ing to the verb. Then comes the object. If it is present perfect or present perfect continuous, then had will be replaced by has or have. But since this is past perfect, we use had. Now there are three different narrative voices or pronouns: first person pronoun, second person pronoun, third person pronoun. I had discussed about all these three pronouns or narrative voices in my previous video on past perfect tense. Okay, so in the first person, you write it as I had been writing the letter. Had been writing the letter. The letter is the object. Next, first person plural pronoun is we had been writing the letter. Second person narrative voice, it becomes you had been writing the letter. Third person singular is he, she. Third person plural is they. He had been writing the letter. She had been writing the letter. They had been writing the letter. It had been. I cannot use the verb write for the pronoun it because it cannot be addressed to a human being. So you can say it had been watching, it had been climbing. Such verbs you can use for the pronoun it. Now it's time for us to move into the uses and functions of past perfect continuous tense. Where exactly should we use or apply past perfect continuous tense? Let's have a look. First and foremost, you need to keep in mind that duration is important in past perfect continuous tense. We had discussed this even in present perfect continuous tense. But over there, the action shows its effect and consequences up to the present. And here, since it is past perfect continuous tense, the effect and the consequences, the duration is seen in the past. Okay, duration is important in past perfect since it is continuous, continuity. It's an ongoing action, but everything happens in the past. So let's read the first rule. For very long action in the past, use past perfect continuous tense. So if you have to show the duration, the extension of time, the stretch of time, if you need to stretch the time in the past, then you need to use past perfect continuous tense. Now let's have a look at the example. I had been staying with James ever since he shifted to Pune in 2019. I had been staying with James ever since he shifted to Pune in 2019. 2019. So this is correct because the duration is seen, the extension of the time is shown explicitly in the past. So this sentence is correct. Now you may ask me, what is wrong with using past continuous tense? Let's look at the same example in past continuous tense, because for many this is a confusing topic. I was staying. This is in past continuous tense. This is in past perfect continuous. I was staying with James ever since he shifted to Pune in 2019. I don't say this is wrong, but this is not grammatically accurate. Why? Let's reread the sentence. I had been staying with James ever since he shifted. I was staying with James ever since he shifted. So which sentence out of these seem a bit informal, relaxed and lackadaisical, seems very casual? The second sentence. Second sentence seems to be very informal. There is no punch. There is no seriousness in that. But the weight and the punch of the duration or the extension of time is very clearly shown in example 1. I had been staying with James. I was staying with James. That doesn't sound very profound, very deep. The deepness and profoundness is seen in past perfect continuous tense. I had been staying with James. I hope you got it. So that's rule number 1. For very longer duration in the past, you need to use past perfect continuous tense. Let's look at the second example of the very same rule. She was tired because she had been exercising. Had been exercising is in past perfect continuous. Let's look at the second example. She was tired because she was exercising. Was exercising is in past continuous. Let's read it again. She was tired because she had been exercising. She was tired because she was exercising. So out of these two statements, which sentence is seen to be more serious, more formal? This one. Okay, this has got a more serious tone. Why? Because how far or how much the exercise is vigorous in nature is shown in this example number 1. She was tired because she had been exercising. Why she got exhausted? Because the exercise was too vigorous for her to deal with. Whereas in second example, she was tired because she was exercising. It looks a little bit dull or light-hearted approach. That the punch and the impact of exercise is missing when we use past continuous. Whereas when we use past perfect continuous, the power and the force of the exercise, the weight and the impact of the exercise can more be felt when we use past perfect continuous tense. I hope this is clear. Let's move on to the next function or use. So this is the second rule, and a bit of this is already discussed in rule number 1, and that is we use past perfect continuous tense for a more formal and serious tone or approach. Let's read it. Use past perfect continuous tense. where the emphasis and a formal approach is given to the action. Okay, emphasis and formal approach means to sound a little bit of serious. You're sounding more serious, and you are someone not to be taken lightly. Okay, let's look at the example. I had been working. So this is in past perfect continuous tense. I had been working overtime since April. I was working overtime since April. This is in past continuous. So out of these two examples, which one sounds more formal, more emphasis, stress, and a punch is given on example number 1, whereas this sounds a little bit of local. If you had, imagine that if you had to say this to your boss, to your management, asking for a pay rise, for a rise in your wages or salary, what would you say? Sir, I had been working overtime since April. So it sounds more professional tone. Doesn't it sound a little bit of white collar tone, a little bit of professional and a white collar tone? Whereas, look at the second example. Sir, I was working overtime, and this seems to be very village, very local, provincial type. For a more professional tone, if you want to make them understand that you are not someone to be taken lightly but more seriously, you can use past perfect continuous tense. So for a frequent action that happened in the past, where there is more emphasis and stress given on formal tone, formal approach, seeming to be very serious and solemn, you can use past perfect continuous tense. Let's leap on to the next rule. So this is a rule of exception. You can see here that this is a caution. This is a warning. Do not use past perfect continuous for narration in a story. Narration means storytelling, to give a general background. Okay. Now, those of you who have read storybooks and all might be familiar that for an action in continuity in the past, we have never come across sentences with past perfect continuous tense. Okay, that's a fact. I have never seen a story going this way. The king had been going for a walk. He had been moving down there. No, I have never seen such sentences in storybooks. We use past continuous for an action of continuity in the past. So that's what the rule is all about. We should not use past perfect continuous tense for narration, for storytelling, for a narrative. Instead we use past continuous. Let's look at the example. The king was going for a walk in the woods when suddenly a tiger sprang onto him. His soldiers were moving slowly and they were aiming at the tiger. So was going, were moving, aiming, all these is in past continuous. We do not use past perfect continuous for a narrative, for a storytelling. So I hope you understood this. So I hope you got my point. Like, for example, once upon a time, there lived a king. He was a brave warrior. He was fast asleep. So one day he decided to go for a walk. He was walking slowly in the woods when suddenly he came face to face with the tiger. Soldiers got very scared and they were trying to aim at the tiger. So these kind of narratives or storytelling we usually use past continuous tense. So this is rule 4 in reported speech. What exactly is reported speech? We tell someone what another person has told us. So in reported speech, when we report someone's speech in past continuous tense and present perfect continuous tense, we report it in past perfect continuous tense. You might be aware about direct speech, indirect speech, reported speech, narratives, narration and all. So what are they? When we speak to someone what another person has said in past continuous and present perfect continuous tense, we report to the third person in past perfect continuous tense. Let's look at the rules. He said, I was going out. Okay, this action happened long time back. And now the third person is sharing about him with another mutual friend of theirs. He said that he had been going out. So this is in past continuous. This is in past perfect continuous. So in reported speech, past continuous changes to past perfect continuous tense. This is just one of the many rules in indirect speech and reported speech. He said, I have been working on the project. But when a third person shares about him to another friend, it said, he said that he had been working on the project. Okay? I have been becomes changes to had been working on the project. He said they were going out. He said that they had been going out. He said she has been working. He said that she had been working on the project. Rule number 5 is somewhat similar to what we discussed in rule 1, and that is more emphasis is given on the duration of time, on the extension of time. And here is a comparison between past continuous and past perfect continuous tense. Let's look over the rule. Okay, so let's read the rule. Use past perfect continuous to focus on the duration of time. What is meant by duration? Extension of time. The stretch of time, the span of time is duration of time. Let's have a look at the example. She was crying, so I gave her a hug. Okay, this is in past continuous. She had been crying, so I gave her a hug. This is in past perfect continuous. Okay, now listen to me. I am repeating the examples. She was crying, so I gave her a hug. She had been crying, so I gave her a hug. In the first example, she was crying, so I gave her a hug. There are two actions. One is crying and second is hug. And both are happening at the same time, at the exact moment. She was crying, so I gave her a hug. Both the actions are happening together. But look here, she had been crying, so I gave her a hug. So there is a gap in between. There is a pause. There is an interruption in between. Okay, that interruption or gap is pointing out to the extension or the duration of time. It means that she had been crying for a while now. She had been crying for some time. Okay, so she needed a good hug from my side. Okay, if you look at the first example, she was crying, then you can realize that past continuous tense cannot hold the span of time. What do you mean by span? Span means the extension, when you stretch it, something. So past continuous tense cannot hold the stretch, the span, or the extension of time. It can be only done by past continuous tense. Next example, I was packing my bag when my sister came. It's in past continuous. I had been packing my bag when my sister came is in past perfect continuous. So listen to me. I was packing my bag when my sister came. Both the actions are happening at the same time. Packing my bag, sister comes. Okay. And look at the second one. I had been packing my bag when my sister came. It means I had been packing for some time. Okay, since a little bit of time, since a longer time, I have been packing my bag when my sister finally came. So that's it. We have to use past perfect continuous tense to show the pull of time, stretch of time, extension of time, passage of time, duration of time. That's it. Moving on to the next rule. Rule number 6 is a different implication to past perfect continuous tense, and it's fun knowing and learning such novel and new things. So let's read. Use past perfect continuous tense to focus on the second event. Okay, to focus on first event, probably you have to use past continuous tense. Let's look at the example. First example is, I was studying MBBS when I shifted to Pune. So this is in past continuous. Look at the next rule. Next example. I had been studying MBBS when I shifted to Pune. Past perfect continuous. Now listen to what I'm saying. Now you can listen to my tone, my rhythm, my pause and interruption, and draw your own conclusion and inference. Where to use past continuous and where to use past perfect continuous. Okay? So listen to me. I was studying for MBBS when I shifted to Pune. I had been studying for MBBS when I shifted to Pune. I was studying for MBBS when I shifted to Pune. I had been studying for MBBS when I shifted to Pune. So in the second example, the stress or the emphasis is on the second event. I had been studying MBBS when I had to shift to Pune. So I landed up in a soup. It was an inescapable, unavoidable situation. I had to get shifted to Pune. Now look at the first event. I was studying MBBS when I shifted to Pune. So in the first case, the first event is important. I was studying for MBBS when my family shifted to Pune. In the first case, the first event is important. In the second case, the second event is important. So most probably second event becomes important when you use past perfect continuous tense. Let's analyze the second examples as well. I was working whole day when my boss called. This is in past continuous. I had been working whole day when my boss called. This is in past perfect continuous. Now listen to what I'm saying. I was working whole day when my boss called. I had been working whole day when my boss called. Okay. So in the second event, my boss really is a disturbance. He's such a nuisance that he had to call at the time of the hour when I was working. Okay, in the second scenario, the second event is important. The boss actually is creating a gap or an interruption which I did not expect. I had been working on the project when my boss called. I was really scared. Look at the first one. I was working whole day when my boss called. It seems to be a little lighter. So hope you understood this. Let's move on to the next rule. Rule number 8. Use past perfect continuous tense for an action that is the cause of another action in the past where duration is also important. But let me say one thing. Duration is important, but other than that, the force and the power of the action is also equally important. How intense the action is, how vigorous the event is known through the tense that we use. When we use past perfect continuous tense, it sounds more severe, serious, and solemn. Okay, let's look at the example. His liver was damaged because he had been drinking since 15 years. So had been drinking is in past perfect continuous. So the rule is all about the action that is the cause of another action. What caused the damage to his liver? His drinking habit since a long time. The rule number 1 stated that when you have to portray or depict, imply a long duration, you have to use past perfect continuous tense. But duration is important, cause is important, the force and the power of the action is also important in PPC. Okay. Look at the next example. The building was finally demolished because they had been working on it from weeks. Okay, had been working is past perfect continuous. So the building was finally demolished or pulled down because they had been working on it from quite a long time. They had been dismantling it, they had been breaking things, they had been pulling down things. So to make all these actions and gestures seem very powerful and strong, we need to use past perfect continuous tense. Dismantling, breaking, pulling, demolishing, all these are very powerful actions, and if we use past continuous, then it will look very local, very provincial. Third example is George was angry as he had been working overtime. He had been working overtime. George was dead angry because he was subjected to non-stop work. Okay, so the action event is more powerful. His anger becomes powerful because he is subjected to some atrocity, something evil for a long time. Also, an action is the cause of another action in the past. So why is George angry? Because something that he has been subjected to is happening for a longer duration in the past. Rule number 9 states, use past perfect continuous to the action that progressed in the past leading up to another action in the past. Progress means continuity, ongoing. Leading up to means until another action in the past. For something that is in continuity, is ongoing in the past, you have to use past perfect continuous tense. Not only that, your action which is in PPC is leading to another action. Let's look at the examples. I had been working, it's in PPC, past perfect continuous, as a clerk before I got promoted as a secretary. I had been working as a clerk before I got promoted as a secretary. So in order to get this upgradation or promotion as a secretary, I should have been working in that same institution. Yes, I had been working for a long time as a clerk when finally my superior, my authorities decided to finally upgrade or promote me as a secretary. So this action, my work as a clerk, was considered as a plus point in that institution to be promoted as a to be promoted as a secretary. So this action is leading to this action, and also the first action is in progress, is ongoing. Okay, I cannot be secretary very soon after I have become a clerk. It takes a lot of time for promotion, for upgradation. So I had been working for a long time. I hope you understood. Second example, I had been working on the project when mom entered. So in order for this situation to take place, I should have been in the same room as my mom. Okay, I should have been at my home itself. I had been working on the project when mom arrived. So this action is leading on to the next action. I hope you understood it. It's rule number 9, and I have included some of the words that are commonly found in past perfect continuous tense, and so I thought I should make a note of it. And those words are when, for, since, before. Okay, you can find them commonly in past perfect continuous tense, can be used alongside past perfect continuous. Example 1, I had been working on the project when I got promoted. So that was very sudden. I least expected it, but I did get promoted. Second example is, this government scheme had been going on since 1945. So all these are the words that show the duration, the extension of time. Third is, he had been playing for the team for 5 years before getting promoted as a coach. For, before. So all these words, when, for, since, before, just keep in mind that we commonly use them in past perfect continuous tense. Let's move on to the next rule. So this rule which I have written here is rule 4 of present perfect continuous tense. The link is given in the description. You can have a look. So a comparison between the two is important. The situation and the scenario is important. So I thought I should discuss it here. So rule number 10 says, use past perfect continuous tense for an action that finished in the past, but the result or consequence is more important that too in the past. Okay, the action finished in the past, but the result or consequence is more important. I have taken the same examples which I had given in present perfect continuous tense. Let's look at the first example. It had been raining. This is in past perfect continuous tense. Imagine a situation, the same example and the situation I had given in present perfect continuous tense. That is, your cousin comes home, he drives his car for a long time, he reaches his home, and then you and your cousin, you both have a casual conversation for some time. Then he goes away and he gets off to sleep. Later, he remembers something and he asks you, "Hey, Smita, why was your road so wet? Why was your road so wet?" And your answer is, I forgot to mention, it had been raining for a long time. Okay, but this situation in the present perfect continuous tense is happening in the present, and this is happening in the past. Okay, let's move on to the second example. I had been studying whole night. This example is also given in present perfect continuous tense. I had been studying whole night, past perfect continuous tense. Imagine that your neighbor comes to your house and you both have a light-hearted, a casual conversation, and then your neighbor leaves and she meets you the next day. And the next day she asks you about the previous day's conversation. She says, "Hey, when I came yesterday, you looked so tired. You seemed so tired. What was the reason?" And you reply, "Oh, I had been studying the whole night. I had been studying the whole night." So for an action that finished in the past, where the result or consequence is more important, past perfect continuous can be used. Moving on to the next rule. Next rule says, do not use past perfect continuous tense with stative verbs. Use PPC only with dynamic verbs. Now, I have discussed this previously in my other videos of uses of tenses. Stative verbs are verbs related to emotion, thoughts, assumptions, feelings and all. Like, dislike, love, assume, cost, measure. These are stative verbs. They are abstract. Dynamic verbs are action-packed verbs. He had been going, eating, playing. All these are dynamic words, and past perfect continuous can be used with dynamic verbs. But even in stative verbs, there can be exceptions also. There are a lot of exceptions in grammar. Like, let's see, he had been realizing it. That's wrong. I had been disliking it. The dress had been costing about 10,000 rupees. No. It had been measuring, it had been weighing. So such usage of past perfect continuous in stative verbs is not regular. It's not proper. Okay. So that's it all for today. Hope you had a great day. Like, share and subscribe. Stay tuned.